Now that we have explored the many different kinds of computers, and at the first part we have also explored what a computer does. Hopefully you still remember the information processing cycle, which is input, processing, output and storage. Don't forget that, right? Now we ask ourselves, why do we use computers, right? So why do we use computers, or rather the advantages of using computers, right? So why do you use computers? Of course, a lot of us will say because I enjoy using it. I can use it to browse the web, I can do this and that. But think of doing work on the computer and compare it to the work on your own, or asking someone else to do it, a human being, right? As compared to a human being or yourself, why do you prefer using the computer for certain tasks? For example, doing your assignment, in which maybe you have to do calculations in Excel, accounting, for example. So why? Usually it boils down to these reasons. First one being speed. No one can deny that when you do work on a computer, it can be done really quickly. I mean, if you do something, even complicated calculations using some kind of calculator inside your smartphone or Excel sheet inside your computer, notebook or desktop, right, it will be done really quickly. Even very complicated things. Let's say if I give you this question, 1, 2, 6, 7 times 8, 8, 9, for example. If you ask a human being to do this, he or she or them will take some time, except maybe those geniuses, right? But computers in general, any kinds of computers, will be able to do this really quickly. So that is speed. At the same time, when you use your computer, you can, for example, open Microsoft Word and then open media player to play some music or something, and then occasionally go to Google Chrome to look at your Facebook posting, or someone is messaging you, personal message or whatever, right? So you can do several things, which is possible because we have this thing called the memory, right? So this is RAM, meaning using the computer you can multitask. Several things can be done at once because of the memory. So this is another advantage of using the computer. This is advantage number 1. Advantage number 2. At the same time, again, you're doing something on Microsoft Word, your assignment, and you're tired for the day. Again, you can actually save it and do it later. Right? So you also have storage. You can store things. Right? Now, next is reliability of the computer. The hardware is very reliable. Number 4 is reliable hardware. Again, these are all of these things are actually available in your slides. Please refer to that. Again, available in e-learning. Hardware is reliable, meaning a computer does not fall sick, for example. Right? You can rely on it any time of the day, except maybe if it's broken down. But generally speaking, it is very predictable when or if the computer will actually fall sick, meaning if by any chance it crashes, it might happen again. But if it does not have any problems, generally speaking, the hardware is very reliable. It is not as unpredictable as human beings. For example, I can fall sick, I can be lazy, I can go crazy for a day, for example, right? And then, of course, the last one being accuracy. The computer tends to be very accurate. When you do something on it, you can expect a certain result which is consistent every time. You can give this kind of calculation, or maybe even higher number, for example, even greater numbers, and you can be sure majority of the time, if not all the times, the information it gives you is accurate. And those are advantages of using the computer. Again, anything at all that brings us some kind of benefit will also have disadvantages. Right? And the computer has disadvantages as well. For example, let's say you search for something online let's say you search for, on Google you search for pink fluffy unicorns. Now, if you do this search, although pink fluffy unicorns is relatively a very specific and very rare item, I mean, who knows about the pink fluffy unicorns, right? For example, who will sell it or who will have it at home, for example, right? But if you search this, chances are you will get hundreds of thousands, maybe hundreds of millions of results. So that is the first disadvantage of using the computer, because it's just so accurate and because it's just so speedy in doing its work. It might give you a lot, or rather too much information, and this is called information overload. So this is disadvantage number one. Too much information. Okay. Next, a computer can also give you what we call inaccurate representation. Meaning, let's say for example you're communicating with someone and you're using a computer. Let's say you're SMSing. SMSing is technically using a cell phone, but you can also use a smartphone. Or you're saying something to someone using your Facebook messaging method, right? Well, if you do that, right, you might say something something friendly, but it can be interpreted differently. Let's say for example you can say, get out of here, you know. It might mean, oh, you know, you're just kidding me, right? You're just kidding, I won't believe you. But a very straight, literal person might take it, well, literally, right? And it might sound as if you're really angry, right? Or you really can't stand him. Representation, right? Okay, inaccurate representation, especially in social media and lots of different things, because communications using computers, it can be very sterile. You don't have emotions in the voice or emotions in facial expression and lots of other different things, right? Okay, next is expense of equipment. Expense. Needless to say, although the computer can do lots of things, generally speaking, the more you want to do, the more you have to spend, right? Rather than, like for example, training yourself to do it yourself, right? If you want to use a computer, chances are you have to spend more. So there is expensive equipment. If you want something else done, let's say you have done this very nice picture or whatever, you want to get it printed. Now you have to have a nice printer, or else your work won't be accurately represented. Right? So that is another problem. Expense of computer equipment. And last but not least, this is something covered in your slides as well, is the health risk. I mean, if you're using a computer, especially when you're browsing things, especially, or maybe you're watching a movie or something, what happens is that you expose yourself to technology for long periods of time, and too much of anything is not good, right? Especially with regards to computer. At the very least, I think you know this, at the very least, you might get some irritation in your eyes or some discomfort. When you use the computer for long periods of time, you'll be exposed to different kinds of health risks. For example, you're using the mouse for long periods of time. Technically speaking, the natural positioning of your wrists will be straight like this. And if you put it like this for long periods of time, there is slight discomfort. Of course, you don't go putting your wrist on your mouse and go, oh, I'm injured, no, don't do this to me. That won't happen. But if you use it for long periods of time, and I've experienced this, what happens is that you might get some discomfort around your wrists, right? For example, in my case, sometimes there's that crackling sound, right? So computers can pose a health risk when you're exposed to technology, meaning to computer, for long periods of time. You expose yourself to what we call the repetitive stress injury risk. Right? Repetitive stress injury is not a certain kind of disease which is specific. Rather, when you expose yourself to repeated stress, right, over long periods of time, it might result in some kind of an injury. For example, when you use your mouse, it's a rather stressful situation around here, and you do it for long periods of time, 2-3 hours a day, right, 7 days a week, right? So you repeatedly expose yourself to the stress. It might result in some kind of an injury. One type of injury in this particular group of injuries or health condition is called the carpal tunnel syndrome. Carpal tunnel, right? You can refer this from many different websites, or you can refer to your slides. There's some mention of this, or if you have a textbook, you can refer from a textbook. What is the carpal tunnel syndrome? It is a health condition with regards to the area around the wrist, especially with regards to the hand that uses the mouse, or maybe as well as the keyboard, but mostly the mouse, because the positioning of the hand is not really natural. You don't really, not a lot of us will have some kind of cushioning here. We just leave the wrist hanging like that, and then we hold on to the mouse. So what happens is that we repeatedly expose ourselves to the stress, which in the long run might result in an injury. The carpal tunnel syndrome, right, is one type of repetitive stress injury, and makers of computer and makers of technology have been, you can say, trying to rectify this problem by creating devices which takes into consideration matters of ergonomics. Actually, you can refer to your slides for this. It's actually the study of safe and efficient environments, especially working environments. Here we're talking about different things. We're talking about, let's say, radiation from monitors, right? Radiation, from your monitors you have this glare which is really bright, and you're exposed for long periods of time without you realizing it, because it's just so exciting on the computer screen, right? Things like, you're watching you're stalking your friend or something on Facebook, or you're playing a game, bright lights, and so exciting, you keep on looking at it. Then we have things such as the mouse. Then we have things such as Wi-Fi signals, which is some sort of radiation as well. Okay, and needless to say, even if we have all these problems with the computer, it is still a very interesting device to use, because it can do so many things, especially now that we can communicate. We can do lots of different things. For example, you can use a wiki, right? These are all covered in your slides. Hopefully you can remember. Hopefully you can briefly explain what a wiki is. It's something that you can actually share, or rather it's a website that hosts information that the community, anyone in the community can actually edit, right? So it's an information sharing platform. Other than that, we also have online applications. I would like you to try this. If you can, do try this. It's called Google Document. Online application, right? For example, Google Documents. So it's this very cool applications which is hosted online. It is not unlike Microsoft Office, where you have Word, Excel, PowerPoint. So you have that document processing and spreadsheet and presentation. And the nice thing is that Google Documents is something that you can share, and people can edit it simultaneously. For example, you're working on a certain survey, or you're working on a presentation that needs to be submitted next week, and different people in your group will do different parts A, parts B, C and D, etc. right? if you are to use one file and then person A edit first and then give the person B, she or he will edit, it might take a lot of time. But if you have it in Google document, all of these A, B, C and D can be edited at the same time. So that is Google Documents, right? Then we have online interaction, right? For example, we have things like Twitter, right, and etc. Then we have social media, right? Facebook, MySpace, right? Interaction. We have blogs and whatnot, right? So interaction or information sharing, right? And then we have social media, social interaction and social media, right? So these are benefits of using the computer to communicate, right? Of course, this is possible when or if you have access to technology. For example, you have a computer and you have network communication. So this brings us to the next question. This is called the digital divide, right? Which is, you can say, the disparity or the gap between people, between the haves and have-nots, between people who have access to technology and people who do not. And needless to say, when you do have access to technology, you're also exposed to lots of different kinds of advantages. Let's say, for example, we have a tsunami warning system which is online, and it will immediately and automatically relay information to people when they are at risk of tsunami, right? So this kind of system, tsunami warning system, will be of more benefits to people in Japan, for example, compared to people in rural areas of Malaysia. Why? Because in Japan, we have the people of Japan have a wider coverage in terms of internet communication and Wi-Fi coverage, free Wi-Fi, for example, which might or might not be the case for people in rural areas of Malaysia. People in Japan might have more smartphones on average as compared to, for example, rural areas of Malaysia. So this is the digital divide. It is the gap between people who have access to technology and people who do not have access. When using the computer, you have a lot of advantage, but at the same time, you have a lot of authority, or rather a lot of power at your hand, at your disposal. You can, for example, write lots of things on the internet and it can be accessed by lots of people. So you have to be responsible, right? Another concern with regards to using the computer is with regards to software. And as we discussed earlier, software is a list of instructions for the computer to do things. But software, being a list of instructions, it can contain what we call flaws, meaning instructions which say something but is understood differently by the computer, right? So misrepresentation or misunderstanding, and this happens when the computer or the hardware understands the instructions differently and does something else. For example, if I say go there, for example, I point to a place, go there. Some people might go front and then left. Some people might go left and then front. Some people might just go straight there, right? So the hardware might do it differently than what the software is telling. And this is hard to detect. These flaws or bugs are hard to detect. Why? Because we don't really see them as flaws. We see them as instructions, and a lot of times we do not see anything wrong with the instructions, anything wrong with the grammar, anything wrong with the way it is said. It's just that the hardware understood differently, so they did something else. And sometimes that something else, called bug or bugs, can be dangerous. It can do something which can, for example, crash your computer or make the program run for a longer time than it is intended to be. And that is software, and it contains flaws, and that is one of the risks you face when you use the computer, other than your health risks and the other risks that we have talked about earlier. Right, three other important concepts that we need to touch on for the first chapter will be first automation, and then outsourcing, and then structural unemployment. And these are all caused by technology, especially with regards to computer technology, computer and communications technology. When you have computers, what happens is that you will have a lot of efficiency. You are able to create machines that can produce the same kind of performance repeatedly. So instead of having some workers handling one part of doing or producing something, you can have one machine that can do it repeatedly 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that is automation. So that is another risk of using the computer. When you use the computer, there is a chance that people might not get jobs. So this is some kind of a threat. Next is when you use information and communications technology, a company in the US can hire people from all over the world, right? At the same time, you as a company can also get someone else to solve your problems, right? Meaning, with regards to information and communication technology, a company might not have to hire people, for example, to handle their computing needs, because they can just say, hey IBM or hey Microsoft, can you solve this problem for me? So that is outsourcing. Outsourcing is where a firm or an organization or company engages with an outsider to solve its own problem, rather than training or getting new staffs to actually handle that particular problem. So that is another challenge with regards to using or risk with regards to using information and communication technology, right? The last one is structural unemployment, right? This is where people are unemployed because of technology, right? Meaning to say that they have the skills, but they don't have the technological know-how, so they are structurally unemployed. For example, let's say security guards. Now, for example, in the year, let's say 10 years back, in the year 2004, security guards who knows martial arts are very well sought after. But let's say in 2044, right? Maybe even if you know martial arts, but you do not know, let's say for example, surveillance technology, like how to handle CCTVs and security software, you might not get hired as a security personnel or security executive. Meaning, although you have the skills, you're structurally unemployed, because technology actually says there is a changing job employment. So technically speaking, it's like you're trained, but you're poorly trained because you cannot cope with the changing in technology, and that is structural unemployment. It is the changing job landscape, right? And so these are the risks and threats of using information and communications technology, right? It is technology which is good, but at the same time, it takes away quite a lot from human beings, right? And that is the risk of using computers, and you have to be a responsible computer user, or else.